Wakia here, or thunder in English. I thought I'd set the record straight. I was thinking about how America and the people of America are under this huge burden right now, and I thought I'd set the record straight as to how all this horrific, nightmarish conditions that we live in today came about. A little history of America, okay, which isn't America. I have said many times that this was called another name by the original inhabitants, the natives that lived here, before it was supposedly quote unquote discovered, which it wasn't discovered at all. It was they discovered it, but it was discovered a long time ago and was the home to indigenous people of this land, and a very comfortable home it was. And not too many people even know the history. If you Google, how old is America, or when was America founded? How old was it? You see stupid questions in there like, well, who was here before Columbus? Hello? That's how dumbed down the population is. Who was here before? Like they don't know. Natives were here. That's who was here. The indigenous people of this land. And how long were they here? Well, let's put things into perspective, shall we? Some say up to 20,000 years they were here. Thousands of years for sure, okay? And we had the ancient people like the Anasazi, the Hopi, the Ute, the Iroquois, the Mohawks, the Otto, the Lakota, the Apache. Just a rich and varied group of colorful people that lived off the land and in oneness with it, okay? And so let's put things into perspective. When you're talking about 20,000 years as opposed to what? Not even 600 years, going on 600 years, that the white European man set foot on this continent and spawned, the millions and millions of people we see spread out across the nation today. We're talking about this continent here. We're talking about Turtle Island, not America. Let's get this straight. People need to do some research, and so in order to save you the time of researching, I'm going to just kind of lay it out. And if you don't like what I have to say, well, then you don't like facts and you don't like real history. And if you want to look up any of this stuff, feel free. Dig around, see what you can come up with. Now, when Columbus came over here, 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. The guy was a maniac, okay, and the people that were with him were maniacs, and they were on some kind of quest, okay, and every little island, even offshore of Turtle Island, or America as they call it now, that had indigenous people, they were butchered and they were trampled on immediately. They were made to show them the way, show Columbus the way. I'm not going to get into a detailed history of how he found this and found that. And then we can also talk about the Spanish conquistadors that came in here earlier even, okay? But suffice it to say that people came in from other continents, okay? The Spanish, that's why you have the Mexicans that are half Indian, okay? You ask most Mexicans, do you know you're half Indian? Do you know what tribe you? They go, oh really? They don't even know they're half Indian. Mexicans don't even. A lot of them don't even know they're half Indian. What do you think you are? Mexican, mestizo, Mexican is a hybrid from Spanish and Indian. And a lot of people in America have Indian blood and don't even know it, okay? Now, when Columbus came over here, and as things spread and colonies built and blah-bitty-blah, and the vermin, as I call it, spread, and these people were, compared to the people that lived on this land, this was kind of like a biosphere, okay? It was pristine, okay? And the people that lived here lived in reverence and in accordance and in oneness with the natural order of things. And they had their lifestyle, and they had their own colonies, but they were mostly nomadic, okay? They pitched their teepees at different places and just enjoyed the wonderment of this land, the pristine beauty, and they didn't interfere with it. They had no desire to interfere with the natural order of things of this land, and they had no desire to pursue quote-unquote technology, okay? For some reason, that was a disease of the European white eyes, the white man that came in here. And then later on, you had all kinds of people coming in from all over the world, immigrants, okay? For some reason, these people, when they came in, spawned nothing but disease and filth, okay? Maybe it was because there was too many of them. Too many. Maybe it was because they were bringing in all kinds of a different biosphere or a different environment with them. Now, when they came over here, the people like the Comanche and, who I've been reading about a lot lately, and other tribes were like, they looked at the white man as another tribe, okay, that showed up, basically, and that's why they didn't get all freaked out at first, because they just figured, well, here's another tribe, and we'll deal with them the same way we deal with each other, we deal intertribally, and yes, there was skirmishes and fights, and but these skirmishes and fights were like raids. They weren't wars, they weren't world wars, they were very earthy, okay, and they were skirmishes and fights, and they were coming, a right of manhood and the warriorship, and it was a beautiful thing, beautiful, compared to what we have now. You have to compare, okay? And so when these people came in, and most people listening to this video, you are the spawns, you are the children of you're part of that original people that came in here, and you're part of the people that destroyed this friggin' land, okay? Well, right away, you're going to say, well, I didn't have anything to do with that. Why should I, what are you talking about? I have just as much right, blah, 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 blah. What are you doing about it now? What are you doing about the conditions now? What are you doing about it? Are you changing it back to the way it should be? Or are you just allowing it to go on? That's my answer to you. Now, just again, to put things into perspective here, when this land started becoming overrun, these people that were living out on the plains and on the prairies and enjoying their life and having a beautiful life and making everything they need and having their food source, the buffalo, and feeling the wind blow in their hair and enjoying the pristine nature of this land and hunting and gathering and procreating and not really having any problems, not too many problems really. It was kind of like paradise. Then all of a sudden when these white settlers started coming in and making inroads across the land, what did they do? They made little highways, they made little trails, and they had wagon train after wagon train. And the refuse that they left behind was incredible. I mean, they would dump off their furniture, their oxen would die, and they just leave them there to rot next to the trail. They'd leave their own kin, they'd bury their own. Sometimes they wouldn't bury their own. They just left a trail of friggin' refuse and didn't care about the land or what they were doing to the land, and killing buffalo by the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, and leaving their carcasses with no reverence, and just taking the coats of the buffalo so that they could sell them for hats. And it was despicable, people. Despicable. Having no reverence at all for the way of life of the people here. And what did the Comanche and Apache and Lakota and other people, they started scratching their heads and going, well, what's going on here? This is not, this is evil. They considered it non-reverential land stealing, and it was. Let's just face it. It was land stealing, earth grabbing, earth gorging, mining, ripping the land apart. I mean, I could go on and on and on about, and one Comanche chief said, well, these people are like ants. I mean, you can cut off their heads even and they still keep coming, where are they coming from? And they just kept, and they procreated and procreated and procreated. Another disease of the mind. Let's have as many kids as we can. Let's have as many kids as we can. Let's just populate, and these people should have been fumigated right from the very beginning because of their lack of reverence and their stupidity. Now, some of the European men and white settlers became mountain men, okay, and they fully realized, okay, that's why I like talking about the mountain man. They fully realized that the native was right, and these mountain men even wanted to get away from their own civilization, their own people. And so they went up into the mountains and learned from the Indians. Learn their ways, learn how to camp, learn how to make buckskins, learn all the same things that the Indians knew about this land. You had people like Jim Bridger and Jeremiah Johnson. I could go on and on with the mountain man thing. When they learned the ways, they didn't even want to go back to civilization. They hated civilization. They hated any kind of inroads into where they were at up in the mountains, and they could see it coming too, just like the Indians. They even, and they warred with the Indians. They had fights, but then they were friends with the Indians, and they went to these things called rendezvous and traded buckskins and traded, that was the thing, trading with other tribes and trading. So as the white man encroached upon this land, another disease was, besides the diseases, the horrific diseases that they brought with them, smallpox, cholera, that the natives had never had any problem with, never came into contact with. It wiped out, as time went on, it wiped out whole tribes, and sometimes it was done knowingly. The white man would trade blankets, or he would put it in the food. He considered it his duty to get rid of the savages. Okay, now who had the savage mentality? Let me ask you. To get rid of people like that, to know that your sicknesses that you brought in could be used against others. How disgusting is that? And these people these native people broke out in sores. They died in the hundreds and hundreds and thousands. They had the dysentery. They just considered it horrific. I mean, whole villages died. They had to burn. They had to isolate people. And you wonder why they didn't like the white man, why they didn't like civilization, why they didn't like the white eyes, the blue coats. And then off of this, let's keep going here. The white man decided that he was going to set up little trading posts, and he was going to start trading with the Indians. He was going to pretend like he was the good guy. But it was all about making money. And so slowly, as these traders came in and they had things like iron and pots and skillets and stuff like this, stuff that the native made by hand. They carried water in the bladders of animals. They used every part of the animal in a fashion that was reverential to the animal, and they asked for the animal's spirit. They used all parts. You wouldn't believe the stuff we have today that we take for granted. All the utensils they made, knives, everything made from animals. They didn't need the white man's shit. But that little disease called laziness, okay, or finding a quicker way, kind of infected them too. And so next thing you know, they're like, well, we can get pots and pans and we won't have to make them out of this and that. And we can make arrowheads out of the steel from the skillets and from the wagon, the steel bands that went around the wagon wheels. And we can and these new weapons that these new hunting weapons, that the fire sticks that the white man had, the guns. Up to that time, they were proficient with bow and lance, which was all they needed. And they could bring down, 1,000-pound buffalo or whatever, just dead in its tracks with a well-placed arrow. They didn't need that. But the only reason that they started seeing the need for it was because the white man was using that weapon, and later on repeating arms, pistols that repeated and didn't need to be reloaded, And so, the natives thought, well, we better get some of those, because usually when they raided a white community before repeating arms, it took the settlers a while to reload, and they would come in with their bows and arrows and lances and finish them off, which, well, they should have. The way they were treating this land, I have no problem with them finishing them off the way they were treating this land. And look at today. See, that's why we're where we're at today. That's why the situation is screwed up today. It's because there was no reverence, there was no sacred oneness with the land, there was no caring about the original inhabitants of this land and how to live on this land. See, again, the mountain man learned how to live in oneness with the land. So as time went on, more and more people came, and some of the chiefs were just going, they had foresight, and they saw that there's no way we're going to stop this. There's no way we're going to stop these red ants that are coming in and just taking over everything and changing everything and taking our land and coming in with their little machines and surveying equipment and fencing off the plains and killing all the buffalo and laying steel rail and telegraph wires. And what a nightmare. What a nightmare to them. And with that they brought their cities, and with the cities they brought their refuse. Sitting Bull went to a city one time, and other chiefs were, taken on the railroad to Washington. They called it Washington, and the Great White Father. And they were taken to these cities, and they were astounded. Their minds were blown. All these brick buildings and people, tramping around, and refuse and dung and horse dung in the streets that they didn't clean up, and no sewers. And can you imagine that? Can you imagine a native that was living on pristine land in the wilderness, that took care of their needs in the river or whatever, or buried their refuse, or living in accordance with nature, would come upon a city of thousands of people crawling all over it like ants, and crapping everywhere, and dirty and noisy. And see, that was the beginning of the end. It was the beginning of the end, and this is the end, what we have now. And how long did it take? Let's put things in perspective here. Natives and indigenous people were on this land 20,000 years without any of this, and it took what has the white man been here? A short 600. We're talking 600 as opposed to 20,000. And look what they have done to this land. And every one of you out there is responsible, because unless you do something and say something to put it back to the way it was, you're just as guilty. You're just as friggin' guilty, and I don't want to hear another word about it. Once you know the history, once you know what went down, you're on one side or the other. Look what we have now, and everybody's complaining. See, all these offspring from the European men, now they're all complaining about things like Jade Helm and the government and slaving for the man and the financial system and everything that existed, all the buildings and construction and no room to breathe. And I could go on and on and on about how the original, the descendants, the offspring of the original people that caused this friggin' mess, are now complaining about it. You know what this is? I'll tell you what it is. I'll tell you exactly what it is. It's payback. Okay? Payback's a bitch. And that's exactly what this is. You know, there's a term, you know, don't shit in your own backyard. And guess what, people? That's what happened. And now you have to live with it or change it. And it's going to be changed because the ancestral spirits of these indigenous people who are here for thousands and thousands of years are much stronger than you realize, and are much stronger than the little twisted mentalities and spirits of these people that came in later. And we're talking, you know, in alignment with Great Spirit. And you're either in alignment with Great Spirit, which is the spirit that moves in all things, Mother Earth, Grandfather Sky, or you're not. And if you're not, you're going to die. You're going to suffer the consequences. We're all going to die anyway. But where you go after this, and where you know, where you reside, and where, you know, whatever karma or whatever, you know, whatever questions that you have to answer in regards to whatever you did or whatever you allowed to happen, will remain to be seen. Okay? You're going to have to answer for your ancestors' crimes because you didn't do anything about it. That's what it amounts to. I hate to, you know, hate to break it to you like this, but that's what, you know, that's what it amounts to. Is that you're going to have to answer for, you know, for your ancestral, for the crimes that your ancestors committed, because you didn't acknowledge that they committed them. And you didn't do anything about it. And you didn't correct it. And again, a lot of people, oh, that's not my fault. I mean, I wasn't here. I. Well, now you know, don't you? Well, I didn't even know. I didn't even know who was here on this land. Pathetic. Pathetic. You're living on a land that you stole and don't even know who lived here before. Now, these beautiful people and their beautiful spirits have been crushed. Okay? These people have been put in camps, the same kind of camps that you fear, the FEMA camps. Well, they were put in these camps a long time ago, baby. They were wiped off this land. They were taken out with diseases. You talk about diseases, and you talk about camps, and you talk about genocide, and you talk about being rounded up. Well, this already happened to the native people of this land long time ago, 600 years ago. Less than that. We're talking 1830s, 1820s, 1800 was when it really started getting horrific. So everything that you fear, okay, and that you think is going to happen to you with being rounded up and put in FEMA camps and this and that, and what are we going to do? This already happened to the native people. Wake up. This already happened to the native people that were, again, living here. I can't emphasize this enough. Thousands of years. And how long did it take to destroy all that? A short 600 years? And think about the technology and the crap and the buildings and the refuse everywhere and the smog and the pollution and the, oh my God. People, wake up. 600 years it took to destroy America, and it's pretty much destroyed. How much time do you have left? Not much. Not much. Because the ancestral spirits and the spirits of the earth know who the people are that had reverence for it and who the people are that don't. It's pretty obvious who doesn't have reverence. Now, can you be a native person of this land in your heart? Because it's not just about. It's about a way of life. It's about a spiritual mentality. It's not just about blood, people. It's not about blood. It's about how you feel in your heart and what you do about it now. And a lot of people they just can't get up the courage and the spirit to admit, okay, this stuff and to go against the original, because it's their ancestors, okay, to go against the original people that committed this crime. So it would be like if your father was a murderer and stole land, okay, if your father was a murderer and stole land and spread disease, would you like your father? Or would you try to correct the actions of what your father did, even if you were an offspring? Or would you just say, well, it was my father? It's like saying, this is my country, right or wrong. It's not your country, number one, never was, never will be, no matter how much you think it is. It's not your country. It's the indigenous peoples of this land who are dwindling more and more and more. But mark my words, it's not, Spirit won't let this happen. Great Spirit won't let it happen. This is here for some kind of giant lesson to mankind. And you will pay the piper for what you've done. You will pay the piper. And you're paying it now. And we're all paying it because of inaction and because of what went down before and not recognizing it and not fessing up to it. And it's about time people fessed up to what their ancestors did or didn't do and where they came from. And it's about time that people had a change of heart. And the only way that you can have a change of heart is to fess up and admit, yeah, that was really wrong what went down. It was really wrong what this land has been turned into. This is all wrong. It's not right. And this is why we're suffering today. And not get all hung up in, well, the natives fought too. Just bullshit little argument crap that if you study history and if you study what went down and if you study the horrific crimes, people talk about the Jews in Nazi Germany. I'm telling you, that can't even compare to what went down in this country with the millions of innocent people butchered and given disease and kicked off their land. So that's a native's view of history. That's a real view of history. That's an indigenous people's view of history in this continent. And we're talking just this continent. So I want you to think about these things. And, and come to your own discussions and conclusion as to what should be done. Can anything be done? I don't know. But I'll tell you one thing, I'm gonna inform people as to what really happened. Because most of the people walking around in this country don't even know that people lived here before. They're stupid. And they don't know what went down, and the history has been rewritten and will be rewritten by the imbeciles that control this. And people talk about the Illuminati and the powers to be and the central bankers. Well, where was this spawned? Was it spawned by the Native American? No. And you know that. So that's basically it. That's discussion ended, end of story, period. It didn't come from us. So that's what I wanted to talk about today, and I think I pretty much nailed it. And it's something you should consider and think about. It's not that I hate anybody out there. It's not that I am racist. I'm not. The great medicine men said all people are one, or should be. But it's about spirit and mentality and where your heart is. Where's your heart, people? Peace.